Hello and welcome to the latest GateDrop.com podcast. I'm Jonathan McCready and joining me is Andy McKinstry, and we're going to look back at Glendale Supercross, the first of the Triple Crowns. And Andy, 3 motos. Do you prefer that or do you prefer the single race? I think the 3 worked out pretty good this weekend.
Good question. Whenever you wake up early on a Sunday morning and you're rushing to get everything watched before the motocross action comes on, it's kind of like, oh, I could do with 1 this week. But whenever there's obviously not motocross in Europe on, then you're not in much of a rush. So 3 is good. But I do like, in general, I do like the triple format, especially for the 450s. I think it's good. 250s, although quite ironically enough, 250s probably produced the better racing because of one moment this weekend. But in general, I think for the 450 class especially, the triple format's good. 250 because, you know, Craig's at a higher level than everyone else. Maybe not the greatest idea, but then you can't really have it for one class and not the other. So I feel like doing it some weeks is the right way to go, actually. So I could quite like the way that they're doing it. You know, the majority just one main event and then now and again triple format. Probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think initially I thought the 3 would be a lot better than the one main event, and at times it is. But to ask the guys to do that 3 times for 17, 18 rounds of Supercross, you're probably asking for trouble in terms of injuries. So yeah, I think it's, not sure how many it is this year, 3 or 4, but even if it was a maximum of 5 or 6, I think it is good. It breaks up the monotony of the same thing every week as well, which I think is pretty cool and gives you something extra to look forward to. And for Eli Tomac, 1 main event or a triple crown, 3 motos, it doesn't seem to matter because he looks like he's established himself as the man. 2 wins and a 3rd place on the 3rd and final moto. It looked like he just kind of controlled everything. He knew where he was. He wasn't obviously going to risk too much for that one, which again can be the downside. Whenever you have somebody dominating the first 2, they gain control of the night. And for the 3rd moto, they maybe don't have to put everything into it. But Eli Tomac overall was the fastest guy again for the 2nd week in a row, and we're really starting to see some separation now. Both him, Chase Sexton and Jason Anderson seem to be your 3 main title contenders, but at the minute they're all having to catch Eli Tomac at an 11-point lead. He's starting to do some damage, and most scary for everyone else is his starts are really good. Maybe the 3 best starts he's got in the row that I can remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely Eli Tomac's best round of the season so far. Really, really good. Like you say, it's not too often you see him. I think it was it 2 hole shots he got? Can't quite remember the last one now, if he got the whole shot in the last one or not.
2 out of 3, I think.
Yeah. Either way, very, very strong out of the gate, unlike his teammate. But less said about that, maybe the better for Ferrandis.
We'll get on to him,
but start wise, riding really, really well. Confidence is, you know, at the first round there was a question mark there, but now he looks a lot more confident. He's gel with the bike, and like you say, definitely this week he was the fastest rider out on track. And when you add that with 2 hole shots, very hard to stop.
Yeah, and he looks also very relaxed and happy. He doesn't always, in the past, sort of have that demeanor about him. He looked quite intense and maybe wanting to separate himself away from people, but he seems more happy to chat. He's seems very comfortable with the bike. He shouted the bike out a few times during the day on Saturday about how much he feels at home on it, feels comfortable with the settings, and he also said he really enjoyed the track. So everything seems to be trending in the right direction for Eli Tomac, and you would almost think he's maybe ahead of where he thought he was going to be 5 rounds in. Leading the championship already. He's usually a slow starter in terms of getting his momentum in the second half of the year. But already, as I said, he's pulling away in the championship, and everyone else is going to have to try and catch him. Jason Anderson looked like he was going to go for him in the second one, and then he went down, and that really hurt his overall, although he was still 4th because he came back well with 2nd in the last moto. But no one was really able to go bar to bar with Eli Tomac whenever it mattered to try and win either of the first 2 motos. And you start to wonder now, is he going to be able to control this championship with with his performances, just like he did this night in Glendale over those 3 motos. He seemed to get the starts when he needed it and then play it safe, but still get a good result with a third in the final moto.
Yeah, the one thing about Tomac is, I mean, in the past, mentally, I don't think that's been his strong suit, let's say. But this year, you know, he got the red plate without even winning a race. And I was intrigued to see how he'd handle having the red plate because that does bring pressure. But ever since he's got it, you know, he's won the following 2 rounds, having not won before that. So he's actually improved his game. So mentally, I think he's in a good place, possibly the best place he's ever been in his career. So it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain this going forward. What I would say is, even though he was the fastest rider at the weekend, Anderson really should have been going 2-2-2 there. And if he had went 2-2-2, he would be a lot closer. But these things happen. And Anderson, I think he's been the most unlucky rider out of them all this year so far. So still for him only to be 15 points back, I don't think is too concerning because I think he has got the pace of Tomac and Chase Sexton, like you alluded to earlier, is the other one. But outside those 3 now, you have to be concerned. But I think Sexton and Anderson will still be content with where they are as long as, you know, Eli doesn't keep this winning streak going.
Yeah, I think they just have to break this streak, if you want to call it that, after two races. But after what we've seen in the first few rounds, to win 2 in a row is a massive thing for Eli and certainly puts the pressure on Jason Anderson and Chase Sexton because, as you mentioned, they do have the pace. So it's about producing the results now to show that pace and to keep themselves thereabouts and keep the pressure on Eli Tomac in the championship. But Chase, he said he wasn't happy with his first moto in 11th, a couple of crashes. So to come back with a third and then really take a pretty dominant win in the last one, I think was good for him and good sort of look into his mentality. That after a bad first moto, he was able to come back and end the day on high. So I think we don't have to worry about him in terms of mental strength. And Jason Anderson has that many problems this year already, as you alluded to come back and still get second on that third moto to kind of ease the pain of that 12th, and which was his own mistake as well. In the second moto, mentally, it looks like those 2 guys are in for the long haul, and they also have the pace. But as I said before, Eli Tomac getting good starts and getting hole shots isn't good for Chase Sexton and Jason Anderson, because usually in years past, Eli would maybe fluff a handful of starts during the year and maybe make a mistake, and that would be where the other championship contenders would get big points on him. But at the minute, that doesn't look like it's going to happen, and you might just start having to beat Eli Tomac straight up from coming out of turn 1 over the 20 laps.
Yeah, I think you're right. It might come down to that, but like I said earlier, I do think Sexton and Anderson, they're probably the 2 riders at the minute that are capable of beating Eli straight up. But aside from that, I think the other ones will be worried now because it looks like those 3, as we always say, the cream usually rises to the top, and it does look like it's those 3 this year that are going to be in this championship battle, and anyone else is going to probably have to win the next 2 or 3 to get themselves back into it. And as we've seen this year, Eli's been the only one to win 2 in a row. Before that, there was 4 different winners or 3 different winners, and so
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how the next few weeks pan out.
Before we get to Dylan Ferrandis, we should mention Malcolm Stewart, really consistent, good speed. He maybe never quite had the pace to where you would have thought he was going to win, but he certainly had the pace to get in amongst the podium positions. 3-2-4 for second overall. Huge podium for Malcolm. Huge podium probably for Alden Baker as well. And I think that's maybe brought Malcolm another step closer in confidence to where he can get a race win. He's been fairly consistent so far, but that was more sort of 4, 5, 6 positions. This time his pace definitely went up a level, though you would say it might have to go up another level to actually win a race. But you have to do it in steps, and Malcolm Stewart's taken a couple of good steps so far this season. Definitely pretty impressed with him, and the fact he's with Alden Baker makes you think there should be more to come.
Yeah, what I would say is Malcolm's probably my rider of the day, only because of expectation. You're never
Yeah,
really that surprised to see Tomac dominate, because at the end of the day, it's Eli Tomac, and when he turns it on, he's going to be hard to stay with. But Malcolm was very good, and for him to do it in the 3 races, 3, 2, 4, very good, very consistent. Like you alluded to, he has been consistent this year, and that's helped him, you know, be good in the championship, but he needed a weekend like that, to help him. And he's moved up a few places now. Before this weekend, he sort of quietly went under the radar, and now he's got a second overall. And with that, he's sneaked into fourth in the championship. So if he can keep getting podium rides like that, he's probably going to be knocking on the door of the big three if one of those, has a DNF or whatever, because he's only 18 points off, which isn't bad at all, considering how much he's went under the radar in the first 4 rounds anyway.
yeah, and the consistency is definitely there. He was actually ahead of Justin Barcia now, who's dropped to fifth in the championship, and again another so-so performance for Justin Barcia. And you mentioned the red plate bringing pressure. You wondered how Eli Tomac would react. Well, he's reacted with wins. Justin Barcia, whenever he got the red plate, he reacted by actually getting worse, unfortunately for him. Sort of mid top 10, probably most importantly for him, he hasn't had the greatest of starts. And Justin Barcia down to fifth. He's still consistent, as I've mentioned before, but again, it's not the consistency you need in that top three, that top five to win championships. He's just starting to lose touch now with those front three, and also Malcolm Stewart, who you mentioned, is now up to fourth place. So Barcia, one of a few guys that are going to be reevaluating their expectations and maybe looking for bike settings, because the last couple of rounds just hasn't went his way.
That's what I was going to say. His starts were pretty terrible, so he wasn't helped by that. And strange one, because Barcia isn't usually too bad out of the gate, so not sure what happened at Glendale, but during this week, I think he'll be just practicing your starts, because I feel like his speed isn't too bad.
No.
He certainly got the speed to be in the top five, so I think he'll be frustrated, and he'll know that the starts were the biggest issue at the weekend.
And usually when he gets good starts, he seems to find that extra bit of pace because he's that excited to be up front and bang bars with whoever's up there. Talking of starts, Dylan Ferrandis, he has to be pretty angry with himself. It's one thing to have bad starts and maybe not have the pace, but whenever you qualify second, and then did he get pole in the second session, right with Eli Tomac. So whenever you see Eli Tomac's results and you know you're on the pace of him, and you basically get bad starts all night long, which then leads to more problems. You're pushing harder. You're racing guys you shouldn't be racing with. That ends up in a crash in the last moto. Ferrandis only 9th in points and in no way reflects his speed, but he has to be pretty angry because he's just not executing on his potential at the minute in terms of results. We know he has the speed, but these starts are killing him, and it was a problem I think most people foresaw for him if he wanted to be a champion. In Supercross, you need the starts, and so far he hasn't been able to figure them out. And more frustrating for him, Eli Tomac's only on the bike, and 5 rounds in, he's figuring out the starts. So big pressure on Dylan to get these starts, because without that, you feel he's kind of letting himself down in terms of what the results he's capable of.
Absolutely. Look, it doesn't matter who you are, if you're Eli Tomac, if you're Jason Anderson, or if you're Jace Sexton. If they're starting 20th every week, they're going to be where Dylan is now, probably. No matter who you are, if you're starting 20th, it's very difficult to come through a pack. And battle guys shouldn't be racing against, and then one thing can lead to another. So he definitely needs to get these starts dialed. Yeah, like you said, speed in no way reflects being 9th in the championship. I feel like he could easily be top 5, like, to be honest.
Yeah,
easily top 5. So frustrated because he has got the speed, but at the same time, it must be nice for him knowing that he has the speed. So it just leaves one element, really, getting them starts sorted out. But strange how starts have been Ferrandis' weakness ever since he's went to America, really. I mean, even when he raced GPs, I don't remember his starts being too bad, but ever since he's went over there, I'm not sure what the reason would be, but hopefully he can figure something out.
Yeah, for me, he probably should be in the Tomac Sexton Anderson battle for the the championship, even given the odd bad start here and there. But to be ninth, he's at a bad first round, he's at a bad fifth round. Although even that second moto, the first two motos, he was coming through really strong at Glendale. So,
it was just the crash that killed him really in the last one.
He's able to pass, even when it's hard to pass, but he's actually coming through relatively well. He's just not really seeing the front of the pack at all. And it's got to be, you've got to go to bed at night and hardly be able to sleep. You're that frustrated. And maybe he's thinking so much about the starts now. That's becoming a problem as well.
Yeah, it could be a mental thing. I mean, I think his best start's sixth. And is that the race he got on the podium?
I think it was.
Yeah. So it just goes to show, I mean, even if he gets out at the top 10, it's not too bad. But it feels like every moto, bar that one where he got out sixth, he's around 15 to 20th, which is no good at all. And one thing that I think he'd benefit from if he was getting good starts, he'd be able to relax a little bit more at the start of the race, and you're able to follow guys then instead of just having to pin it and try and pass guys that you shouldn't even be battling against. So I hope for his sake he can sort out his starts as soon as possible, and we can see him up there battling for podiums.
Yeah, he's coming through the legs of Ken Roxon, Cooper Webb, and Marvin Musk and Justin Barsha, who we all know are very, very fast and very talented riders. So it shows you the level Dylan's on in terms of riding. But when he sees Eli Tomac with the red plate and himself back in ninth, pretty much out of the championship already after 5 rounds, it's gotta be incredibly frustrating, because you have the speed to run with Eli. He probably sees that during the week whenever they're practicing together as well. But another guy who's going to be disappointed and angry with himself is Cooper Webb, because right now he's in a big problem to reclaim this title. There was a good interview with Kellen Brower on Racer X where Cooper was pretty candid on press day before the race, actually saying that he was struggling to find a good setup for the bike. Each round they've been trying something new, so it's felt like a new bike almost every time. And he thought he maybe had settings going back to last year's base, even though it's a new bike this year, but that clearly didn't work for Glendale either. And Marvin Muscone actually beat him as well. So definitely problems, and it looks like it's mostly set up in terms of finding the comfort, which is quite interesting, because Cooper was talking about how he barely changed the clicker from the practice track coming into NIM1. Now it looks like they're just trying absolutely everything to try and find some extra comfort, and there wasn't even a massive load of whoops this weekend at Glendale, so I thought he might be better. He was actually a bit quicker and closer in terms of qualifying pace initially, but that didn't result in results on Saturday night. Cooper Webb 8th overall, another 11 points down on Eli Tomac. This is not going well, and big pressure, big frustration for Cooper Webb.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a shocker of a night for Cooper Webb standards. The fourth round, I think you could just put the fourth round a bad night, but the fact that he I think, in my opinion, he looked even less comfortable at Glendale, which is worrying. But it's a strange one with the bike setup, because I feel like the bike was okay the first 3 rounds, but whatever they've done, I think they've made things worse there, because the 5th round he just did not look comfortable whatsoever in the bike, and I think that was the first weekend really where he just didn't look a shadow of himself. So maybe go back to the settings I had for the first 3 rounds and then go from there again, as opposed to whatever they done for round 4. Maybe go back to what because I feel like he started the season off not too bad at all, especially the first round was very good, and like you said, they didn't really change a clicker all the off season. So I'm not sure what's going on, but I think they've made a few bad decisions with bike setup there. But it'll be interesting to see if he can claw it back and be. Well, the one good thing is at least he finished 5th in the 3rd main event, which isn't too bad, because after the first 2 races, 8-8, not good at all. But at least he ended on somewhat of a high, finishing 5th, because 5th isn't too bad at all. But he has to be in the top 5 every race really, and especially now. 23 points off, I think he is.
He has to win.
I think you have to. You're pretty much ruling him out of the title now after the last 2 rounds. So barring him, like you say, he goes out and wins the next couple of main events, which at the minute, you'd have to say is unlikely.
And the worst part was it the second moto he got away third, and he was sixth, seventh, eighth within a lap or two. You know, all his rivals were able to pass him. Like, that has to be one of the. You don't often see Cooper Webb in that position. You got to wonder what he was thinking, because it's not good for your confidence.
That was the moto where you just did not look comfortable one bit. Yeah. I'm not sure what happened. Well, I suppose the positive is after that they must have changed something for the bike, which worked for the third main event. So maybe that's the one positive. Hopefully they find something for that last main event and they can build from there. But certainly whatever was going on in that second main event was not like Cooper Webb whatsoever.
And this leads a wee bit into Ken Roxon as well. He also said he wasn't very comfortable. He said he's had testing days, but they've been bad testing days, as in his press release just released there today on Monday. Cooper Webb, Ken Roxon, both obviously struggling with complete comfort and trust in their bike. Roxon said he didn't totally trust the bike to do what he wanted to do and go the speed that he really wanted to go. He, for me, actually rode okay. I think he was salvaged fifth, if I remember rightly, which wasn't too bad if he was feeling that uncomfortable. Unfortunately for him, Chase Saxon was third, and it's almost starting to look like Saxon's the team leader there. But he's also had problems with the whoops, and he'd said he'd hired a track out like Elsinore because they had bigger whoops. And this brings me to the whoops itself this year. I've maybe threw a bit of a curveball for riders who've been testing all winter. The whoops, to me, for anybody that watched Supercross in the late 90s and especially early 2000s, the whoops were absolutely huge then. And this is maybe the closest they've been to that size. Now, obviously, 450s is probably a bit easier actually to go through than it was on a 252 stroke or even a 125. And I still think the whoops looked more difficult back then. But have these whoops created a scenario where riders think they've got their bikes on a certain level on the test track, and then the tracks now that they're racing on are actually, especially when it comes to the whoops, are quite a bit different than what they've been practicing on, and it's thrown the whole comfort out the window, and then they're trying to get the bike ready for whoops, and then it's maybe not working everywhere else, and then they're losing maybe in both places. It's the couple of riders seem a bit lost at the minute in terms of bike setup.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I feel like the first three rounds, the whoops were definitely a lot bigger than the last couple of years. But Glendale, it was more of a regular supercross track that we've used to the last couple of years. So I don't feel it should have hindered them for that one. But like I say, for the first three maybe. But at the end of the day, Roxon dominated the first round, didn't he? And then, because his teammate crashed, and I mean, I remember thinking Webb started the season well. It's really big whoops there. So I'm not sure if you can pin it down to the whoops, but it certainly could be a factor. But the worrying thing for me is, for Webb's point of view, is just how uncomfortable he looked. And with Roxon, I mean, we know what his issue's been, staying on the bike and not getting cleaned out. So I suppose that's one positive for Glendale. He kept it I don't think he crashed or anything, so he kept it in two wheels all day, and he was pretty consistent. But you know, Ken Roxon's not going to be happy finishing races in sixth or seventh, so still definitely a lot of work to do there. And I mean, similar to Webb, barring if they come out and win the next couple of main events, is this championship chase over for them?
At the minute, yeah, unless, as you said, they're going to have to hit form pretty quickly, get bike set up dialed pretty much this week, and go on a bit of a winning streak, couple of race wins in a row like Eli Tomac. But whenever you've the likes of even Justin Barsh into that mix as well, that's three guys all wanting to do the same thing who haven't shown the speed to be able to do it yet. And you've Eli Tomac, Chase Saxon, Jason Anderson, who we know have the speed. So whatever way you look, it's very hard. But for me, Ken Roxon might be the one guy that has the raw ability just to feel good that night and just go out and win. I think he has I would still say he's maybe the most naturally talented rider in that field. But Cooper Webb, to me, he needs to feel good and he needs to see a wee bit of light to get that momentum going more, whereas Roxon can just get on the bike that morning, feel really good in his first lap on the track, and then that seems to get him back where he belongs. But I was almost laughing to myself in the third moto for Ken Roxon, because in front of him he had his two worst nightmares, Justin Barsh and Cooper Webb. I was thinking all he needed was Jason Anderson behind him, and he'd be waking up thinking it was a bad dream, because those are the teams with the three guys he has the most problems with. And it was almost like he obviously did want to pass them, but you almost got the feeling he was almost afraid to go for the pass on Barsha. And whenever he did, Barsha put a pretty hard block pass back on him, which sort of was exactly everything Ken Roxon was afraid of. As you mentioned, he'd been on the ground the last two main events in the last 2 weeks. So the last thing he needed was Justin Barsha taking him out again, and he just about stayed up. And I think from there, Roxon played it safe. But that's the other thing with Ken. He has riders that almost bully him, and Anderson, Barsha, and Webb are sort of those three. So unless he was feeling really good, you could sort of tell that he was a wee bit hesitant to try and put the move on Barsha and Webb, because those two guys aren't afraid to give it back.
Yeah, the thing about it for me is, whenever we're talking about Rox and Webb, when Webb hangs his boots up, he can look back and say 1-2 supercross titles. So even if he does have a bad season, you can never take that away from him. But the thing that's very frustrating with Roxon is, he left GPs to go and win a supercross title. Obviously, he's been through a lot, and just for him to be racing deserves a lot of respect. But it's just very frustrating, because I feel like if he was just a little bit stronger mentally, and maybe, like you said, didn't get bullied by some of the riders, he probably would have won a supercross title by now, even with what he's been through. So I just feel like it's very frustrating that he's currently 7th in the championship, and it's unlikely he's going to win this year after only 5 rounds. I definitely don't think he would have been happy with that coming into the championship. So I feel like he's maybe got the biggest point to prove, because he hasn't got one of these titles under his belt yet.
And not only that, but at the minute, Roxon has always been, growing up, the main guy in pretty much every team, and he's been the guy with the most potential, and he'll come good. Now it's Chase Sexton is beating him in the championship. He's the younger rider. He's the guy that everyone's saying he's only in his second year. He's only going to get better. And Ken Roxon, I think I heard was maybe Steve Mathis saying that his deal might run out at the end of this year. So is Ken Roxon looking to continue? Is he looking to race? What sort of deal will he get in terms of, he's going to get a factory offer because he can win races, and if everything clicks, he's the title contender. But will he get the same level of money that he's been used to? Will he then ride for less money than he's used to? He actually said in an interview as well that he doesn't have to do this now, alluding, I guess, to the fact that he's relatively financially secure. So it's almost that he wants to do it. But with all that going on, he's a family now. What is the future for Ken Roxon in the next couple of years? That's going to be something interesting to look at. And the performances aren't quite where he wants them at the minute. Yeah,
during that main event, actually, during the night, from watching the main events, that thought did cross my mind. And the thought was, Honda do have a decision to make at the end of this season. Because like you say, Sexton, at the moment, you would say he's the number one rider under that awning. The championship table doesn't lie. And while Roxon might have his days where he goes out and dominates, because he'll always have that in the locker, he has got the ability. But at the end of the day, for him to be potentially out of the championship after 5 rounds, that's not what Honda are paying him for.
No.
And especially if you've got somebody like Christian Craig, not sure what he'll be doing, if he has a contract beyond this year or not, but somebody like that available, probably be a lot cheaper. Honda, they've definitely got thinking to do.
Yes, could be a big decision on A, Honda, and B, Ken Roxon. Just where they want to go, and financial packages as well, because you'd imagine Chase Sexton, he's going to probably deserve a rise in salary the way he's riding at the minute too. So a few things to juggle for HRC Honda coming up, probably not that long actually, because they sort of hire based on supercross results generally, and we're nearly halfway into this series already. So things could be coming quick for Ken Roxon and HRC Honda. Another interesting thing we're talking about teams is the fact that Eli Tomac and Jason Anderson are in new teams. Jason Anderson is on Eli Tomac's old team, and he's making that bike look good. And Eli Tomac went to Star Racing, and he's making that bike look good. Malcolm Stewart as well, just got the 2nd overall. Also, he's on the new machine that basically Cooper Webb's on. It looks like Malcolm's adapting to that better. So does Ken Roxon maybe then just need a change of scenery because Eli Tomac wanted off the Kawasaki for whatever reason, bike setup different, just to change the scenery, maybe something new. If that's worked for him, but it also has, it's Kawasaki still look good because Jason Anderson came onto the bike, Eli's left, and he's maybe as good or better than he has been in his whole career in terms of raw speed, you would say, in Supercross. Could something like that work for Ken Roxon? Just a different team. I know he's been on a few already, but something as simple as that might rejuvenate him a bit as well, especially if he's having trouble setting his bike up.
Possibly, but I mean, where do you see him going? I know obviously he's going to get offers. It's Ken Roxon at the end of the day. I mean, I could see him, if he hadn't already have been a KTM, I could see him at KTM, especially if Plessinger doesn't improve. But you know, he's been there before. I don't see where he'll go, to be honest. It'll definitely be one to keep an eye on if he does, if Honda decide that they're maybe going to let him go, or B, Rox himself decides a change of scenery will be good for him. It'd be hard to predict to see where he would go, I would think.
If Justin Barcia hadn't signed another year at GasCast, you'd have thought that maybe would have been a good fit. It seems to be good in the market, and it's the Red Bull. He's the bike he used to ride, but it's still all different. But I don't know if those two would be teammates.
Yeah, I couldn't say that. Exactly, actually what I was thinking when I was answering that question. GasCast, if Barcia wasn't there, but like you say, I couldn't see both them underneath that on it.
And again, for KTM, Justin or Marvin Musquin looks like he's only doing Supercross only this year. Would that be an option for Ken Roxon, and then your teammates with Cooper Webb? But with this new World Supercross series, you might see more guys going Supercross only, doing that World Supercross series as maybe a warm up for the AMS series, and maybe there could be rides constructed around that scenario. Less outdoors, but no, outdoors is more grueling. In America, you have to deal with the heat, which for Ken Roxon and his health situation probably isn't really going to suit him. So would something like that help? Who knows? At the minute, he's becoming a bit of a question mark.
Who knows? Might even come back to MXGP. Who knows?
I would doubt that, although that would be pretty cool to see, actually.
No, I agree with you. I would doubt it myself, but it would be pretty cool.
I think Ken's injury in 2017, I think he was maybe at the peak of his powers before he got hurt there. If that hadn't happened, there was maybe a chance that he could have won a Supercross title by now, and then at this point in his career went back to MXGP to try and win that title and become one of the few, aside from probably Jean-Michel Beal, the only guy to win a world title, the elite world title, and also the elite title in America, which is Supercross. But it looks like the way things are going, that probably isn't going to be an option, just even in terms of time, even if he wanted to, because he still has to get the Supercross title, and it's not getting any easier.
Exactly that. And there's so much talent in the MXGP paddock now as well, that they're not really looking to America anymore, because, you know, in America, all the riders are kind of Supercross specialists, and there's that area of uncertainty when it comes to MXGP. So even though Ken Roxon's amazing, unbelievable rider, you still don't really know how it'd stack up against the MXGP guys, and how much time, you know, we'd need to adapt to the tracks and the rough sand tracks and slick hard pack tracks. Obviously, Ken Roxon's amazing at the end of the day, and he's going to run at the front in MXGP. But you know, if a factory rider or a factory team was signing him, they'd probably want them to challenge for the title, and Moody challenge for the title. Be difficult.
Yeah, we've seen generally historically it's harder to go from AMA, even if you're coming back and you're originally from Europe and know the series. It still seems to be hard to come back from America to ride World Championship motocross from February till nearly October and deal with that winter Lommel scenario compared to
winter in Belgium. I think that's the hardest thing. The winters in Belgium and Holland, riding really rough sand tracks and very cold whenever you can be in America.
Gary Barbershop is currently in Florida and seems to be enjoying a lot more than he was a few weeks ago in Lommel. So I think that says it's definitely a nicer climate, considering most riders are based in Florida or California. In the winter, you can see why it's a bit harder to come back and ride Lommel Motos. But before we wrap up the 450 class, Shane McElrath 10th overall, Dean Wilson 9th. Good results for them. McElrath definitely getting quicker and quicker, I feel. Aaron Plessinger a bit subdued. I think a bit like all the KTM riders are struggling with bike setup, and Plessinger had a bit of a crash last week. Again, didn't get the start, so not ideal for him. Max Anstey, I think he'd a hurt shoulder from last weekend, so a bit of a struggle for him, but he made it through to the main event. And 19th overall, Justin Bogle, 16th overall, Brandon Hartranft, 15th. He's been good this year, especially recently. So the Hep Suzuki guys, Justin Bogle, looks like he's starting to find his flow a bit more, so that's encouraging to see. But really, the biggest talking point was 250 class, Vince Friese. How would you describe what he did to Christian Craig? Maybe tried to kill him, because Craig just went flying. I mean, he was so lucky not to be badly injured. No fault of his own. He'd already made the pass. He's leading the championship. He's a dominant rider. And suddenly you've one guy who's just don't even know what he was thinking. I don't know why he thought he could make the pass there, because he wasn't even level. And one incident like that, which is sometimes the sort of thing that happens to Christian Craig historically, but I think we're maybe seeing a slight change in Craig's mentality this year. He's very confident. He somehow got up from that, didn't start a fight with Vince Friese, got on the bike, got the whole way back up to fourth, and then ran away with a third moto to pretty much limit the damage, you would say, and he lost 3 points to Hunter Lawrence. But you could argue that's a 6-point swing, and going down the stretch as this championship nears the end, he might look back and be under more pressure from Hunter Lawrence than he wanted to be. But Vince Friese, Christian Craig was very rightly extremely angry with him in the press conference, and you can't blame him, because Friese is always at the centre of everything, it seems, every time anyone tries to pass him.
Yeah, to be fair, French Friese I find a very frustrating rider, but I am going to play a devil's advocate here.
Uh-oh.
Now, I'm not justifying what he done, but it was the first lap of a supercross race. The intensity's mad. Everyone's defending their position. And as soon as he decided not to, take that inside rut, he sort of had to go out wide. He couldn't he needed to go into a rut. So, and I don't think he meant it. I've seen him do moves before where he means it, and you're like, oh, but here we go. But I think first lap, it all happened very quick for him. So I don't think he meant it, and he did take himself out as well. So I've seen him do worse, I would say. There was one that he done on Martin a few years ago where you knew he meant what he was doing. And I think if the Craig incident hadn't happened in the first lap, but things happened very quickly in the first lap, and one mistake and something like that can happen. If I was Craig, to be honest, I'm not blaming him whatsoever for what happened, because he did get took out, but you can take your time. You don't have to make the pass in the first lap. Take your time, let the race come to you, and then he goes and wins that if he passes him in the third or fourth lap, because like you said, Craig's on another level in that class. So, but it is quite unbelievable that Hunter Lawrence is only 8 points off him. We might actually get an exciting end to this championship if something else happens, Craig, in the middle of it all.
Hunter Lawrence is probably very happy that Vince Friese is also on a Honda, because I mean, you said Friese, while I think he made a miscalculation in terms of, I think he maybe thought he was side by side with Craig, but he wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
But the thing is, he's never ever going to beat Christian Craig ever.
Well, yeah. That's
so
the
why
other side,
go for that move against a guy that's could probably near podium on his 250 and on a 450 main event with the speed he's going? Vince had a good first ride. He had the chance of a podium himself, and he actually rebounded really well from that crash the week before. So everything was actually going really well for Vince Friese. So the decision to even try to get Craig back at that point, instead of even going to the inside and thinking he could block him then coming out of the turn, it's just a move or a calculation or a decision that kind of makes Vince Friese.
Yeah, he definitely should have went inside. But like I said, split second decision. Obviously, he's decided to go outside, and then once he's decided that, like you said, I think he was side. I don't think he thought Craig had the move done, and he just miscalculated.
Yeah.
And that's what can happen. It can happen very easy, and especially I'll go back to it. I know what you're saying. He's not going to beat Christian Craig, this, that, and the other, and he's not going to beat Christian Craig. But I can sort of see it, because the first lap, And if you get away, ride really well the first lap, if you can lead 2 or 3 laps, you're going to pull away from the rest of the pack. And especially in a supercross race, it's very intense. The first lap's carnage sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, it's bad what he done, but I think I've seen him do worse.
I think if it was a different spot, he tried to pass Craig back, you'd be like, yeah, that's all right, But they were going so fast into that turn and it'd been kind of leveled. There was no real line, and it was just the decision itself was pretty baffling, considering that Friese also had a podium reward at the end of his night, very much on, because he was actually riding really well up until that. So he ended up ruining his own race, and he could have ruined the guy's title hunt, because Craig said this is his last year in the class, and whether he wins or loses, he's moving up to the 450s, and you just don't want a kamikaze pilot to boot you out of the championship. But it all worked out quite well for Hunter Lawrence, and he took his first win. And even in practice, his times were good straight away, and he made mention of that the team had said to him to attack the track earlier and get your race pace in earlier in the day to get your qualifying better. And then maybe you feel better in the night because you have that confidence and you have that speed. And I think that definitely worked for him. He looked a lot better in qualifying. Took the race win. He had a bit of pressure as well. I think it was Moseman. And generally, all in all, I think this was maybe Hunter. Yes, he mightn't have had the raw speed of Craig even, but generally, I thought this was maybe his best race of the year, just in terms of his full day. And he's got that win to boot, because that was 3 main events, 3 races where he showed the good speed, and he obviously won the moto under pressure. So a lot of boxes ticked for Hunter Lawrence. And as we mentioned, 8 points, which could have been 14 points. But thanks to Vince Friese, he's very much in the championship now.
Absolutely. Definitely when he looks back at this season, that'll be one of the highlights, I think. 2-1-2, very consistent. He was easily the second fastest guy. And like you said, one collision between Friese and Craig, and has gifted Lawrence the win, let's say, but you have to be in it to win it. And Hunter's doing that. Throughout Hunter's career, sometimes he's been in the one, the rider involved in some of those incidents. So it's nice to see him play smart this year. Just learn as much as he can at Supercross, and I feel like next year he definitely could be a favourite for a Supercross title. And obviously Moseman had a terrible night, so
he wasn't.
So really good in the championship chase. It looks like, barring any disasters, we're halfway in that championship now. So all being well, Hunter should get second, which is as good as winning that championship, really, whenever Christian Craig's going to be the guy that's going to take it.
And Joe Shimoda third. Really nice to see him get third. He's been crashed a lot, which is unusual for him, but this time pretty consistent, 5.33. I still think he thinks he should be up there with Christian Craig, probably going for wins, but you have to start somewhere after a season like that, and to finally get that podium has to be a relief for him. And I think he's definitely riding maybe faster than he did last year, but he's still kind of trying to find that balance of speed and consistency. But it's good to see him get some reward, because he's been through a pretty tough first five rounds of the series. And Vince Friese still got 5th overall, despite that move on Craig that also left him on the ground coming through the field. So actually a good rebound for Vince, and 5th overall. He has to be pretty happy with that, going 3.10.4.
Yeah, just on Shimoda, I mean, it's funny the difference a year can make sometimes. Everything was going well for him last year, no expectations on him. And the first 4 rounds of this season, really, it just didn't really go to plan. But like you say, it was nice to see him have a good, solid, consistent night. I think he needed that. And hopefully we can see him run a bit closer to the front during the last half of the season now. But what I would say is, when I was looking at the championship standings that series, quite hard to believe that so much has happened to Shimoda, and he's still 4th in that championship.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think the depth is there in that championship this year, to be honest. Obviously not helped by a few injuries and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of guys, that top 5 or 6 is pretty well defined, and even if they crash, they're still able to get back there. Nate Thrasher, actually, he seems to have 1 lap speed, but he's still trying to put it together in the races. Jalik Swole, maybe a wee bit similar, but of course he got injured at the first round. So guys like that just haven't quite got the full picture together, but they do show potential. And then you have Christian Craig, who has everything together, and then Hunter Lawrence, Michael Moseman, Joe Shimoda, probably the next three. But Moseman, again, still struggling to put his raw speed into results at times. Got to be frustrating, not just for him, but for Gas, because he's quite happy all the time, and he probably has to do that to stop himself getting frustrated. But at some point, you have to be like, you need to produce these results, because 10-2-15 just isn't really acceptable when you're as fast as Michael Moseman for 9th overall.
Exactly. I've been a bit disappointed by him this season, if I'm to be honest. I know he has had some bad luck in rounds, but I thought he would have been quicker than Hunter Lawrence. But I think Hunter's had the measure on him pretty much, and definitely in 4 of the rounds anyway. I think there was one round Moseman might have been a bit quicker, but apart from that, I think Hunter's had him well covered, and I expect a little bit more from Moseman. I just think he has a little bit more experience supercross, so I'm slightly disappointed, I would say, but he has still half a season left for him to turn it around and try and close down the gap, so still anything can happen.
Just that good result for Dylan Walsh again, 12th overall, getting into these men's regular, and definitely you can see more and more aggression coming from him as each round goes on. But let's switch gears back to outdoors, and we'll start with Raiola. It was Jorge Prado versus Tim Geiser in the 450 division, and Geiser looked pretty incredible. Now, Prado stayed with him, so for most of the first race, I think he said he stalled at the end. He actually tried to go for the pass on, I think, turn 2 in the first moto, and Geiser kind of put him wide. So I feel it was definitely a bit of mental games going on. They both said they were just out for training, but Geiger kept the lap times up, and even at the end of that first moto, he pushed on. And the second moto, I actually thought Prado might have had a chance or was going to be motivated to try and win, but he didn't. He just ended up settling for second. And maybe the biggest thing to take away from the whole day was Tim Geiser beat Jorge Prado bar to bar, side by side off the gate both times to get the whole shot. And I haven't seen that in a while. Geiser said in the press conference I was on that the biggest thing he wanted to do over this winter was get the starts better again. And it looks like, although it's not a lot of data, but so far it looks like he's there. On Prado, again, his first race, he looked good as well. I think obviously by that second motor, he wasn't going to risk anything from halfway through. Those two guys, maybe for me, are the two favourites. So it was nice to get a wee bit of a preview of those two coming in on that track. In general, it's just nice to watch riders of that level just bouncing around the sand. It was pretty cool to watch, and Geiser, he's becoming more and more a sand rider.
Yeah, unbelievable track. So good to watch. Hard to beat that there, watching them hop over the bumps. And yeah, it's just great to watch. Geiser hasn't, even though he hasn't got that sand technique that maybe a Prado or a Hurlings has, every year he seems to be getting better and better, and seems to be in a good place coming into this season. He was speaking very positive about the bike and the hard work we've made. And like you said, unbelievable that he got 2 whole shot, or well, he came out twice ahead of Prado at the start. I mean, did that happen at all last year? Because it felt like Prado got the whole shot every moto. So I think that'll be a shock to Prado as well. But yeah, something definitely to keep an eye on. And yeah, it was once it got out on track, I feel like they were just doing the motos. It wasn't, the week before, I think Sura and Geiser properly went at it, but I think they were both just happy enough to be riding around. If it was a GP, they'd certainly have a lot more intensity, but good day out in the office at such a rough track is good to head into the 2022 season.
On the 250 class, Simon Langenfelder was pretty impressive. Mario Guadagnini, he finally got to show some form again. And Cornelius Tondel was fantastic on the Fantic. Unbelievable, especially the super final.
Yeah, I mean, Tondel's beating MXGP riders, and he's an MX 250 rider next year. So it goes to show how quick the MX 250 championship's going to be next year if you want to beat Tondel. I mean, you're beating established GP riders, so it's going to be interesting. But yeah, those three were the highlights. I feel like Fredrickson, he's going to have a disaster out of these starts, but I feel like his speed's actually really good. He was
coming through okay, but you didn't see him, It was...
Yeah, in the first moto, he came from 25th to 5th. I think he passed Guadagnini actually on the last lap, so speed certainly isn't the issue, but I mean, we might not see him all year if he keeps getting out of the gate like that.
Yeah, that's going to be big
And
frustration for him
yeah,
because he's riding good.
the other rider I'd like to give a shout out to is Hakan Osterhagen. He was
Oh,
unbelievable
he
in that
was
first
really
moto.
good, yeah.
Yeah, really, really good. Especially, I wasn't expecting too much after just an average first race at the first round of the series, but that's to be expected usually as a rookie. But for him to have that much improvement in a week and to finish third and in the MX2 motor, and I think he was ninth in the super final. Very, very impressive. He has a very good future ahead of him.
Right, let's move on to France and La Capelle Marival. Probably that was not how you say that in French properly, but not to worry. The main point is probably Maxime Renault debut on the 450, 1-1 against teammate Jeremy Sear, who, as you mentioned the week before, was winning races and battling Tim Geiser. Hugely impressive from Renault. Don't forget this is a shorter off season, so to come out in a firing on a 450 that fast is really impressive. Ben Watson second in the super final, really encouraging for him as well. And when it comes to the 250 class, Kaido Wolf, superb, and also Ron Van de Moostek, the two Huskies, look like they've really come on strong this winter.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect results-wise at La Capelle International pre-season race, but I certainly didn't see Kaido Wolf going 1-1-1. Well, the first 250 in the super final.
Fourth in the overall.
Yeah. I mean, he was only 20 seconds off Maxime Renault, who won it. So that just shows you how quick he was going. And he's just recently turned 17 years old. So
on his best lap, incidentally, was 3/10 off Renault in the super final.
The second quickest of the whole race.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, MX2 is very, very fast, despite what people say. To be honest, after seeing Ruben Fernandez's speed on the 450, I'm not overly that surprised to see Maxime Renault winning. But again, to win all three is a very different question, and he was able to do that. So he'll go into Matterdy Basin buzzing. And obviously, with Fevre and Hurling's major doubts for the first round, it's probably, it's not a bad first race to go into with two of the big five heavy hitters possibly not there. If they are there, they won't be 100% fit. So Maxime Renault knows how to ride a bike, and with those two possibly not there, if they are, they're not going to be themselves. So he'll be fit. He'll be up for it, I think.
And Jago Gertz looked to have the pace. I think he crashed. Was it the first moto? So I don't think too much.
Twice he crashed.
Yeah, too much worry for him. He looked like he had the pace. So good preseason for Jago Gertz so far. Tom Vial, his first race, a little underwhelming just because it's Tom Vial and we all know how good he can be. But for me, I wouldn't be stressing too much ahead of the World Championship. He's probably just feeling his way in, and he's on a new bike.
Yeah, I think he's only had maybe 2 or 3 weeks back on the bike, so he's probably not even really ready to race yet, to be honest. But obviously he has to prep for the World Championship season. But I think it'll make the start of the season interesting because I'm not sure if Vial will be ready to win, and that opens the door for other guys. And if somebody like Kaido Wolf, Rowan van der Moostek, or Jago Gertz gets confident, we've seen what confidence could do for Maxime Renault last year. So it'll be very interesting, and I think it'll be good for the fans as well. Maybe obviously if you're Tom Vial, you want to be 100% ready to go and win from the get-go, but I don't think he will be. I'm not saying he can't win at Matterday because it's Tom Vial at the end of the day, and he's unbelievable talent. But if he's not ready for the full intensity of a race in a 2-day format again, I think if he gets away with top 5, he'll probably be happy enough with that. But like I said, it could open the door for others and could lead to an exciting championship battle, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the results and the winners in France kind of add even more excitement to the start of the World Championship, especially because it looks like Renault isn't going to have too much bother adapting to the 450, and Kaido Wolf looks like he's went to another level on the 250, and considering how young he is and how much talent he has, that's probably not ideal for the rest of his competition. But Andy, thanks very much for that. We will transition now, looking ahead to Hawkstone Park and the start of the World Championship and another Supercross event, round 6 for them in the States next weekend. So it's all coming pretty thick and fast at the minute, but that's this weekend's racing rounded up and reviewed. And Andy will speak to you again next week.
Thank you.